Welcome to this webinar sponsored by the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence at St. Leo University. We will be recording this webinar, so if you'd like to view it later or recommend it to a colleague, you'll find it on our webinar page of our CTLE website or on our YouTube channel. We'll drop the links for those in the chat at the end of today's session. I'm Isa Salazar, a teaching and learning specialist here at CTLE. And our webinar for today is supporting students with D2L data. And I would like to introduce our speakers, Kate Colello and Dr. Christine Picott.
Thank you so much. So welcome all to supporting students with D2L data. Today you'll learn what data is available in your course, and more importantly, what to do when you find it. Kate and I are going to hold a mock conversation with demonstrations to not only show instructors where to find data, but how to support students to make those instructional decisions within your course based on that data.
So we'll provide you with exact paths to find these items through a live demonstration. If you'd like to follow along in one of your courses, please feel free to do so. However, for purposes of time, we'll have to move at a pace that may not be conducive to questions or challenges with your exact course you're looking at. Therefore, you can feel free to reach out to me for further support if you run into something. We'll provide contact information and we'll monitor the chat, but we want to hold most questions to the Q&A at the end.
So as we introduce ourselves, please feel free to log into a course that was previously taught in D2L at this moment. And we're going to go ahead and shift to introductions while you do so.
So I'm Kate Colello. I'm the Senior Course Analyst in Learning Design. I love family, coffee, and data. And fun fact about me, I taught middle grades language arts for 5 years prior to working in data.
And hi, everyone. My name is Christine Picott, and I am an assistant professor in the College of Education at the Tampa Education Center. My research interests include content area literacy strategies. As an instructor for pre-service teacher, my focus during lectures is always engagement. So therefore, I felt it was important to understand how to utilize the tools in my course aligned to hybrid and online learning. So I wanted to learn more about my courses and utilize that data in the course to inform my instruction, but I really didn't have the time to learn a new tool. However, I'm pretty familiar with D2L, so I reached out to Kate for support after attending one of those amazing D2L data webinars.
So that's a great point, Christine. Trying out new tools and remembering new logins sounds great during the summer, but once that fall term starts, you quickly run out of time. I know when I was a teacher, I was busy putting out fires and caring for my students. I didn't have time for a whole lot of extras. So with this conversation here, I demonstrated for Christine an efficient way to use data that's already available to you within your course. So no new logins. So before we get into the data, we need to talk a little bit about learning analytics. So this is the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners and their contexts for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. And the most important piece of that is optimizing learning for students. We need to use the data that we have.
So I asked Kate, what can I learn from the data to help my students? I'm interested in engagement, but are there other areas of that data that can help me as an instructor?
So I shared with Christine how to look at engagement, but that's just scratching the surface, right? So here are the 5 big things you can do with D2L data. You can get an overview of class progress, analyze engagement, monitor students' grasp of content, identify misconceptions, and target communication with insight. The first 4 are about consuming the data, and the last one is that actionable piece that we'll talk about concurrently with the rest. So coming soon in summer 2023, there will be a new module in each of your course sections that you can easily reference with all of these instructions available to you. There will also be a link here to the CTLE website to find the most up-to-date version of this webinar. A help form is available if you have questions about how to use these data. That form sends a request to me to respond to you promptly. And this link isn't to be confused with the request help with course link, which you should use if you encounter broken links or errors and issues in your course. So look for those directions coming soon. It'll be a reflection of what we share today.
So what I'm going to do now is a simulation of what Kate and I discussed during my tutorial with her. So I'm going to go to the Sandbox course here, and I'm going to demonstrate as Kate guides me through some of those topics that we engaged in.
Great. So a reminder, you can follow along in your own course, but if you encounter problems, just kind of come back to us and catch back up with us. And this recording will be available. So the first and highest level of data available to you is class progress. That's probably the most familiar piece, as it's the easiest to stumble upon in your course. This is your main dashboard where your check engine light or low tire alerts show up for your students. So to get there, you go to your progress tab and navigate to class progress. Here we have some Fakey students enrolled in the course to give you an idea of what you'll see. So ours don't have login data, but you can see that on the PowerPoint slide side there. They don't have login data because they're not real students. So along with viewing the amount of content students have seen, you can also gain insight into their login habits, grades, discussion participation. This page is a great way to get a quick overview to regularly check in with. I recommend checking this page at least weekly or whenever you access your course. Red flags pop up here that you can address quickly.
So can I edit these topics that appear in the dashboard, Kate?
Yes, so actually we recently changed the default settings so that the 4 that show up here are the 4 that you see here, content, discussions, logins, and grades. But if you want to see something else in yours, you hit the settings gear right next to the help button. And then here you can click any of the drop-down arrows next to something you want to replace. And then it brings up options for you here. So if your class maybe uses a lot of quizzes, or if you use the survey function, you can replace any of those items on the dashboard with something more relevant to you.
That's great. These are very interesting features. So tell me about these colors.
Yeah, so the colors are a quick way to see that check engine light piece. If you see yellow or red, you can dive deeper. The size of the bar and written percentage also indicate warnings, so you don't only need to rely on color, and you can also change the thresholds for those colors in your settings. But I believe those are back in your account settings.
So that overview of progress gives me a quick way to check on my students. For on ground, I can ask questions about where the students are spending their time and content. Therefore, I'm able to assess engagement in real time. But how can I analyze engagement for my online or hybrid courses?
Yeah, so in an online classroom, we have proxies for things you'd experience in an on-ground class. In person, the time a student spends engaged in content or what their peer-to-peer discussions are like are often invisible or at least ephemeral to the instructor. But in an online class, you have the opportunity to see this quantitatively. Students succeed when they engage with content. If they aren't engaging, you can intervene. So the time and content shows you both class average and individual student time. To get there, go to the content tab. It may take a second to load. Okay, this one, if you can make this screen a bit bigger. Oh, here you go. That's fine there. And then related tools. Yes, right at the top. It's a bit hidden here. And then view reports. This area is a bit hidden, but it's really, really valuable. So here you'll see all of your content, how many students have visited, and the average time spent. And again, our Fakey students don't record time data, but this is the same format that you'll see. The available to column shows how many students can see it, have it available to them. So if you scroll to module 2, instructor resources, you'll see 0 because that module is hidden from students. So if you click on one of the numbers under users visited, so at the top, you'll see the headings. And then, scroll to the right. Users visited, click on that number 1 there. Okay, so this brings you to granular data for that module. So you can see the columns, the student's name, the last time they visited, number visited, total time spent, average time spent here. Okay.
Hey, super. So these are interesting features knowing this for content. I can share with students and walk through portions of the module I want them to engage with for the upcoming week, similar to that concept of front loading. However, what if I notice students aren't interacting with the module content after looking at this data? Is there a quick way that I can address this?
Yeah, it's a great use of this data. If you notice students aren't engaging with the module as much as you'd like, you can post an announcement or nudge students directly with an intelligent agent, especially if you notice a pattern over time. Like module 4 maybe is extremely important and students historically haven't spent enough time there. You can tell your students that. You can set up an intelligent agent to notify students who didn't access the module in a personalized way, and we'll talk more about those later in the presentation.
So if I view the data and I determine that students aren't engaging with that content, can I assign participation points to modules based on how much students are engaging with the content?
So here you'll see on this slide, I've got kind of a big red warning sign there. So I don't advise participation points for time spent in content. And Christine, can you make that slide a little bit bigger?
Sure.
Thanks. So the reasoning for this is that the data is extremely valuable, but there are caveats you need to know before acting on it. So engagement analytics, that's when we're looking at this time students are spending and things, is evolving and getting better every day. But we want you to be aware of how the system works and not assume that it's magic. But not to be so afraid of it, you don't use it at all. So a student could be avidly consuming the content in your course, or they could be making a sandwich in another room. Tracked time reflects the time on a screen until the student clicks to another screen. The tracker times out in an hour and a half. So if a student hasn't clicked to another screen before then, the clock starts over. So just because you see they're on a screen for 4 minutes doesn't mean their eyeballs were glued to the screen, or even if they were, that they were mentally present. Being data-driven would mean you take the data at face value without asking additional questions. It makes sense that a time tracker couldn't give you perfect information because your students aren't robots. If you did give participation points for spending time in a module, say 10 minutes, and students are aware of that policy, you're incentivizing leaving the screen open for 10 minutes to get points, not reading the content. To nudge your students to read the content must be important for assignments and assessments. So for those reasons, we advise not giving participation points based on the time they spent in content.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Many of my students tell me that they use the Pulse app. How does this impact time and content, or any other areas for that matter?
That's a great point about the Pulse app. The time the students access content via that app is not tracked yet. The fact that they were on the screen is, and here's how you can tell. If the number of visits says 1, but the total time says 0, that's a Pulse app visit. However, most of the time students have more than one visit to a topic as they're moving through modules. So you won't really see that 0, 0. As you can see, I had to add that underneath because I couldn't find any examples of that specifically. This is another reason why you shouldn't give participation points for time data, because at our institution, approximately 1/5 of our students are using the Pulse app on any given day. So if you gave points for how much time they spent, potentially 1/5 of students would be undercounted from our population. So if you're concerned that students aren't spending enough time, I would check your content and assessment alignment to ensure your content is necessary to pass assessments, and that your assessments are capturing everything you want students to know and be able to do. So you will likely see this note. If you see this question mark, it just means that in one or more of your students' visits, and I'll tell you how many, the student's screen timed out. When a student has multiple visits, it's not really a concern, but you'll see the total time spent on the content. It might just be an underestimate. And that doesn't really impact your decision-making here, since time and content is best used to look at trends over time anyway. So the other segment of engagement data are discussions. So with discussion data, you can easily see what discussions are hot topics and which could be bolstered with your additional influence. After you change something, did engagement change? So to get to a discussion data, you're going to go to where discussions are. So you go to the activities tab and then click discussions. Towards the middle of the screen, you'll see statistics. So let's see, here we go. It's right on, it's actually up a little bit. Yes, right there. And these data are kind of random throughout the course, where you end up finding them. So now you see two tabs. Top there, you see users and then forums and discussions. So users shows you the data broken out by student. So you can see how many posts overall they've read, how many they've posted, and how many they've replied to. So you can kind of get a general feel for how much they're engaging. And then forums and discussions shows you data broken out by discussion. So again, you can see which kind of are the most popular or what students are talking the most about. And if you use any of those, I think they're called likes or approved, pinned ratings. If you use those, they show up there too.
Okay, super. So these are great features for class progress and engagement. How can I monitor to see if students are actually comprehending the content? Perhaps identify those possible misconceptions. Also, what can I do with this information once I uncover this data?
So you're right that what we've discussed so far has been surface level. So far, we found our dashboard for our check engine light to quickly find problems. Then we looked at where students are spending time and their peer-to-peer engagement with the content. But really the most important piece comes in with students' mastery of content and their misconceptions. It doesn't matter how much time they're spending if they're not understanding anything. So remember, the goal is to discover information so that you can insightfully target communication with your students.
So yes, I agree with this. This is very important when thinking about instruction. Knowing this, I can utilize this data as a formative measure to adjust my instruction and target my communication more effectively, even in real time.
Yeah, so are your students grasping the content? We have 3 ways to check this out: quizzes, rubrics, and grades. So do you use quizzes or rubrics in your courses, Christine?
I do. I use quizzes. I also evaluate students with rubrics.
Great. So you'll be able to use these data in your classes. So to get to quizzes, you want to go to the activities tab and then click quizzes. Same way you would kind of normally get there. Okay. Once that load, you have the statistics tab at the top. This will bring you to all of your quiz data. Okay, so you can see here what the averages are for all quizzes. And again, this is our Fakey student data. So if you click on that first test, you'll then see 3 tabs. Okay, you'll see user stats, question stats, and question details. So you can use quiz data on the question stats tab to find out what questions students are missing, if the challenging questions have something in common. So if you would like to see any of the wording for the questions, you just click where it says random question 3, random question 2, and it'll be in a pop-up window. It'll tell you what the text of that question is. So if they have something in common, such as the same concept or section number, you can find that out here. Perhaps there's a gap in vocabulary that could be addressed, like a question using a specialized word that students misunderstand. If you make your own quizzes, detailed question statistics are available to help you discern a bad question from a good question. However, those are only available for multiple choice questions that are not in a question pool. And I know a lot of our courses utilize question pools for quizzes. So the data is limited there, but you still do get quite a lot to go on. And the help text on the question stats tab will explain all you need to know. So that's right under where you see 60% standard deviation at the bottom right. Right under there, it says, what do the statistics on this page mean? So if you have, we have all NAs under there, but if you have data there, you can click that link and it'll help explain that to you. So again, those are only available if you make your own quizzes or are not using question pool, but they are extremely helpful.
So yes, interestingly, I have viewed a quiz for a course that I did not develop, but I was assigned to teach it. I use that quiz as a backwards design in my planning and my lectures. I did locate that specific vocabulary that was not included in my lecture notes, so I edited my content a bit. This is a great feature to utilize to be sure assessment aligns with instruction and instruction aligns with assessment.
Yeah, so our 4th strategy is to identify misconceptions. So we're going to do that using the question details tab, which is right next to question stats. It's that 3rd tab over. So this is a deeper dive into monitoring grasp of content. Instead of looking just at patterns of difficult questions, this is looking at how your students actually answer. So the small blue arrows to the left of the answers are the correct answers. From here, you can tell if students are falling for distractor items, if they're totally confused, or even if an answer is written incorrectly. And this is definitely actionable. You can directly address these misconceptions either whole class or in individual correspondence, depending on the prevalence of the issue. After addressing the issue, you can recheck students' understanding. And if something is written incorrectly, please use the request help with course link under instructor resources. We need instructors to tell us that.
Good to know. And so I noticed that a number of my students were missing a quiz question. When digging a little deeper, I noticed that a high percentage of my students were answering with the same wrong answer choice. I therefore modified my question. I noticed the wording was a bit tricky. Another example was where a majority of my students were missing a calculation step that I assumed all knew. I then addressed that error in class and remediated with my students.
Great, so those are great examples. In one instance, you modified the question, and in the other, you modified your instruction. So since you said you also use rubrics in your course, let's navigate to rubric data. So if you go to the Progress tab and then rubrics, it's a little bit buried here, but we're going to find the rubric you want. So we're going to use the Nature of Science paper. Okay, and click the small arrow and then view statistics. Okay, there won't be anything on this first tab, activities. People sometimes freak out about that, but we just don't use that feature. So competency activities, this is the second one. Okay, then you're going to click the small bar graph on the right. Okay, and then, so this first page just shows you where all your students fell. It's not super helpful, but it's good to know. So criteria statistics is really the best part here.
I really love this feature.
Yeah, so here you can see criterion data, which is pretty much the point of using rubrics. You isolate specific characteristics of an assignment and evaluate students so that you can make adjustments to instruction over time versus a holistic letter grade that doesn't give you or the student constructive information.
So for example, on an essay, are students having trouble with understanding the main concept, right? Analyzing information, synthesizing sources, or extremely common, the MLA and APA formatting. Rubric criterion analysis is akin to item analysis on a quiz. Understanding that students were not performing well on a specific criterion is very helpful for me to adjust my instruction moving forward, as noticed in this question here. Minimum of 3 scholarly references in APA format. Most 100% of my students are developing in that area.
Yeah, and I believe on this example, they didn't have a hard time integrating the sources, right? I think maybe the criteria above that was, okay, that's overall APA format. Grammar, yes.
Grammar 50-50.
Right. Okay, yeah. So you can really see exactly which areas your students are struggling with versus just, oh, the average grade was a 70. That doesn't really help you that much. So last, when we're talking about misconceptions, let's talk about grades. So if you go to progress and then grades, how you'd normally get there. When you're talking about students' grasp of content, using whole grades is tricky. Again, these are fakey students. Grades can be used to analyze student mastery only if an assignment is granular enough, meaning it's a single concept quiz or a short written response. You can use overview statistics by clicking the small arrow next to an assignment title to determine where students struggle. So if you click on any of those, the little small, yeah, it'll say view statistics there. So for a whole key assignment, a whole big project, using the whole grades isn't really helpful to you. But if you have maybe a discussion or small formative assessment, using the grades breakdown can be helpful. So more likely, though, you'll have larger multi-concept or multi-skill assignments like this one here. So don't use the grade statistics to draw conclusions here. And this is why rubrics are so important. You can break down a big assignment to its small components to see where your whole class needs help. So pedagogically, grades aren't really the go-to source for real-time decision-making, whereas the other elements we've talked about are.
Right, that makes sense. I can't use a midterm grade to determine what areas my students are struggling because that's a final score, right? One number for many concepts. I won't be able to determine what topics, such as citations, because they got a 71 on an exam. Therefore, it's important to assess students with fidelity on these rubric indicators for targeted feedback. For example, I wouldn't give my student a score of 3 on a rubric indicator if they are struggling. If I see a good percentage of my students struggling in one criterion, I would then intervene.
So you want to use your findings from these 3 data points to communicate with students. You now know what concepts, words, or skills students are struggling with based on the data we've reviewed. You don't have to wait to address it. You have the data to back up what your gut tells you about what your students have a hard time with, so you can feel confident in reaching out to them. This all makes for a fantastic conversation in your live sessions, announcements, one-on-one correspondence, and even to help you prepare for the next term. You can tell students in advance what content was challenging in the previous term. There's a great strategy from Michelle Pacansky-Brock called the Wisdom Wall, where you have students leave advice for future students in a discussion board as well. What did they find difficult? So no conversation about being efficient in D2L is complete without talking about intelligent agents. So CTLE has an abundance of resources about intelligent agents on their website. So I'm just going to give a quick overview in case you haven't checked that out before. But you may already know that intelligent agents are customizable messages automatically emailed to individual learners when they fulfill a particular task. For example, an instructor may choose to set an intelligent agent to let students know when they've missed a deadline on an assignment. They're most commonly used to automate communications.
So this term, I noticed that a large percentage of students were not accessing week 15 module. And this is kind of late in the semester, so it could be due to final exam studying, lots of projects due, etc. Excuse me, this term, I'm going to set up an intelligence agent to ensure that students have that friendly reminder or that nudge to do so.
That's a great way to use the data in an efficient way and then pairing it with a communication. So you aren't manually checking and sending out all those emails out yourself every term. So let's go to intelligent agents. So you go to your course tools tab, which here, yes, is going to be kind of hidden because our screen's small. And then under communication, you'll see intelligent agents. Okay, and then we can look at some ones we already have here. I think that would be easier. So you'll see on this screen, we've got 2 agents set up, and we use the description because you will forget what you set this up as. So it's really helpful to type in the description as you're doing it. Okay. So this one is module 15 access, which is the one that Christine was talking about. So this agent will email me and the students who have not accessed module 15 by Tuesday for the Thursday class. Okay, so you'll see we don't have it in a category here, but if you're setting up a lot of intelligent agents, the categories can help. If we want to stay on this page here. Okay, so you want to make sure that it's the status agent is enabled is checked, otherwise it won't run. If you're scrolling down, we don't have this one on a schedule, but if you were doing a recurring alert, you could set that up. So here, because our classes either are 8 weeks or 16 weeks, you're going to have to set up the date later on in this process. So your role in the class list here, and we only want this to go to students, and we set it up to also go to the instructor, but it will only go to the instructor if the instructor hasn't accessed that module. So we don't want to be alerting our librarians that they haven't accessed module 15. They don't need all those alerts. Okay, this one doesn't have anything to do with login activity, but if you're trying to alert students like, hey, you haven't logged into the class in a week or however long, you can set that up as well. The release conditions here, we have 2 set up, has not visited the content topic and has not added any threads to the discussion topic. Okay, and we set all conditions must be met. So this means a student hasn't been to the content topic module 15 readings and they haven't posted a discussion topic. So they really have not engaged here in this module. It is Boolean, so you can change this to or, either or. And then you can, if you hit create there, and then condition type. So you can see there are a ton of options, so many different ways to set these up. You can layer them as we did with the discussion and module access. You can do it based on There's scores on quizzes, or you can use surveys really creatively here too. So these are just some options. And then the second drop down here will bring you to whatever module or quiz is you want to pick. So that brings you to the next level. So you can cancel out of that because we already have our 2 picked here. And if you continue scrolling, okay, the next part says repetition. So we only want to take action the first time this is satisfied for a user. If you hit the other option, that'll alert them if you set it up recurring every time they haven't accessed module 15. So in this case, that doesn't really apply, but you can always hit that link and it'll tell you which one you should use. So here comes the email part. You'll notice that's a checkbox. So actually, if you unclick that item there, send an email, this will just give you a report of how many students triggered the alert instead of actually emailing the students. So if you wanted to use this creatively, kind of as your own reporting tool, you can unclick that email area there and get a report of maybe, let's see, students who scored under a 70, but they did access all the module content. If you want to do kind of a crosswalk report there, you can have the intelligent agents do that for you. But for now, we're going to send an email to students. So we'll check that. Okay, and you'll see that it automatically says it's coming from no reply at St. Leo, and the reply is D2L support. There's a link there that tells you how to change that to your email. So that's a really easy fix. You can just do that yourself when you get there. You'll notice that it says to initiating user. So we have some special email addresses that you can use. I believe it's the blue link right underneath that area. Yeah, this will tell you what special emails you can use. So you can use the student initiating user. If you copy and paste that in there, it'll send it to whichever student. You don't have to manually type them in. And then initiating user auditor is the student's advisor if they have that set up. So that's mostly going to be for your freshman and sophomore, as our juniors and seniors typically have a faculty advisor, and that might not be set up in D2L. So, but at least you have the student initiating user. Okay, you can either copy or blind copy their advisor if you'd like. And then the subject, you can again use pipe text here, or unit name is the class name if you'd like. And then in the body of the message, you can use more pipe text there to have it go to the student's name. So it looks like you really wrote out this text themselves. And then you would type your message to them, making it personable instead of seeming like just an automated alert. You can also send them a video. There's a section right underneath this text box here where you can record a video of yourself talking to them or something. I've seen faculty use kind of like a Bitmoji thing or a little emoji or memes to make it a little more interesting and engaging. Always make sure that your dates are updated here too. It doesn't come across great when students get alerts that say 2019 in them or things like that. They're very aware that you didn't send that email to them. So make sure whatever you're putting here is current. And then I believe is that the end of that? Under the email there? That's the end. Okay, so then whenever you're ready, you would hit save and close, and it would be ready to run for you.
So Kate, let me ask, where are those dates found to change them or just to be sure they're current?
Yeah, so in your email, I think you would do, click the schedule there. Do a one-time run. Okay, there you go. And then it populates there.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, so when I was making sure your dates are updated, I meant in the body of your text. If you reference any dates or terms or anything like that, make sure that part's updated. But yes, you want to schedule it here. Sorry, I missed that part. So whenever that you're planning on this running, you do have to update this in any course. So if you copy it from one course to another, you'll have to change that date to whatever the Thursday is of module 15. And it won't automatically change that for you.
Good to know. Really good to know. Thank you. This is so helpful. I usually assign individual breakout rooms at the end of class to address misconceptions, assignments, and other items. I pop into each breakout room. I could really use this data to guide conversations and target my feedback with intentionality. Yeah,
this opens up many doors. You can use this in so many different ways. I invite you to check out all that intelligent agents can do and ask your fellow faculty, and check out the Brightspace community for more ideas and templates. There's also on the CTLE website, they have kind of a template. That's the word I was looking for. They have templates set up so you don't have to necessarily think through all of the options. Like if you want to alert students for this, these are all the buttons you click. So that was really helpful and not having to think through that every time. So today we've learned, I don't know if that's, let's see. Okay, can you go forward one slide for me? Thank you. So today we've learned how to get an overview of our class progress with our check engine light area, analyze student engagement, monitor grasp of content, identify misconceptions, and then finally how to target communication with insight, whether that's through intelligent agents, news items, or individual correspondence. That's how you can address what this data is teaching you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to go back into my courses. I'm going to use these features. These are so incredibly useful. Knowing first to check and click my settings button and then on class progress. And that will help guide my access to these other areas of data that we discussed. So settings button and then class progress. Also knowing time and content will provide me with that useful information, but may not be a valid measure of actual time. So it's good to keep that in mind, but it'll give me some insight formatively to guide my planning and instruction. By chance, if I forget these steps, is there a resource guide that I can access?
Yeah, so as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, a visual guide in the course instructor guide, and every course is coming soon. It'll be here in the summer, but for now you can skim through this recording. You can also check out CTLE's resources on these topics. There's a D2L customer success data series on the Brightspace website as well, or you can contact either one of us, Christine or myself. I'm on Teams all the time. You can message me if you can't find something. Yeah, so if you encounter any issues there or forget how to access something, I'm happy to send you screenshots or get on a quick Teams call to show you where something is for sure. So we can open it up for questions if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much for participating in today's webinar. We hope you've learned something today that you can use in your everyday teaching. If you'd like to apply something you've learned, we encourage you to use our Apply and Reflect form to earn additional points on the leaderboard. We'd like to ask you to please take a moment to give us some helpful feedback about today's session. We've dropped a link into the survey, into the chat. Once you've clicked on that, the survey will stay open even after you've left the meeting. Lastly, remember to check this out and more videos on our YouTube channel and our webinar page on our website. We'll drop those links in the chat as well. Thanks again and have a great day.